morning, I'm Brenda Pritchard.
And I'm Pam Nelson, inviting you to stay with us next for Fox Valley Today. First segment, we'll be talking with Cheryl Johnson and Melissa Neela from the Kendall County Human Services Office, and we'll be talking about services that they provide.
Plus, we'll be talking to Jesse the Law Torres and Danny Pittman, both of the Aurora Police Department, on a boxing match coming up this weekend. Stay with us. Good morning and welcome to Fox Valley Today.
Hope you had a great weekend. Saturday was just beautiful. The weather was so nice. Yesterday was quite a bit chilly, chillier.
Right, and the rest of the week will be too. But yeah, we had almost spring-like conditions with the sun shining on Saturday.
And I received another seed catalog over the weekend. And it actually is time to get some of those plants started indoors, so you can put them out if they're plants that can, stand a little bit of cold weather.
Hopefully it'll end soon,
yes.
So we can get some of the beautiful tulips and things that we see in the springtime.
And of course, the first day of spring is coming later this month, a couple weeks away, so we can look forward to that. And I guess, it really hasn't been too bad. I always talk about March coming in like a lion. We had a few windy days there, but we'll take a look at news now with Brenda.
Good morning once again. Cloudy and blustery conditions are expected today. I'll have the forecast in just a moment. An Aurora cab driver robbed at knife point by a fare he picked up on the Near East Side. Aurora police say that the driver picked up his passenger near Copley Hospital and took the subject to the 1200 block of South 4th, where he allegedly pulled a knife and demanded the driver's money. The armed robber made off on foot with $130 in cash, but did not injure the driver. Police have no suspects in that case. Aurora police have arrested an 18-year-old alleged gang member on weapons charges after stopping the vehicle in which he was riding for a traffic violation. Police report that at 9 o'clock, they stopped a vehicle driven by Carlos Alvarez in the 800 block of Columbia. They say his passenger jumped out of the car and attempted to flee on foot. Police said they observed the passenger dropping an object as he ran and say when they chased him down, they found a Cobra .380 pistol. An alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent inspected the gun and determined that it had been converted to fully automatic operation. Rafael Wardinez was arrested and charged with felony unlawful use of an automatic weapon and incarcerated. Both men admitted to police that they were affiliated with the Latin Kings gang. The driver was ticketed for a traffic violation. The city of Plano is facing a budget deficit for the coming year. Budget Officer Millie Palm announced a budget shortfall of over $200,000. That deficit will result despite a $400,000 carryover from the previous year, salary cuts, and a wage freeze. While Plano is currently collecting the maximum in tax levy, it is the only area community without a utilities tax, which would cover the deficit facing the city. Mayor Bud Johnson proposed a 4% tax on electric, phone, and gas bills, which would raise over $200,000 annually. Alderman Dave Williams was one of the dissenting votes on that proposal, saying that he couldn't go along with another increase unless the funds were used for street repair. Further discussion of the budget plan is scheduled for March 15th. And brisk conditions today and cloudy and blustery will be the continued weather forecast throughout the start of the week. A high today of 38 degrees. Tomorrow, damp with drizzle early, a high of 40. And on Wednesday, more rain and snow, a high on Wednesday of 46 degrees. That's a look at news and weather. I'm Brenda Pritchard.
And we're back now, joined by Cheryl Johnson and Melissa Neela. They're with the Kendall County Human Services offices in Yorkville. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
First, maybe we can talk about an overall overview of what services you offer at Kendall County Human Services.
Well, Kendall County Human Services is the mental health agency for Kendall County. We've been in existence since 1980. We offer many different kinds of counseling. People come to us for marital counseling, individual counseling, group counseling. They come to us from referral through the schools, to the court services, through law enforcement. They come to us on their own, just as they come needing counseling. We work on a sliding fee scale, and we think that that's important because affordable mental health services are not real prevalent. And so we use a percentage of gross income to set people's fees and have a range that we work in. And so we feel that that's a real good service to be able to provide.
Now you work with youth and teens.
Right.
What are some of the services that you provide for that age group?
We've really, I think, expanded our services over the last 3 years. We have been for many years a licensed child welfare agency, and what that means is we are the responding crisis intervention agency for Kendall County. So we deal with kids who are the MIRAs, which are minors requiring authoritative intervention. Those are the runaways or the kids that are out of control. And we like to take the focus of it's not the youth necessarily that has the problem, it's the family. And so our interaction is with the entire family. And at initial crisis phase, we look at how we can increase the communication within the family, coming up with some contracts for the family, and ultimately our goal being to preserve and reunite families. So that's one of the services we provide. We've also started a teen drop-in center, which has really, the number of kids have just tripled since the initial phase. We're averaging about 40, 45 kids now per night that we're open. And the goal of that is to provide a drug-free alternative for kids and give them some recreational as well as some educational and therapeutic components.
What would kids do when they drop into the center?
Monday nights, it's real structured, and we're open 5 to 9 on Mondays, and we have a homework assistance program from 5 to 6. We have youth group, and we break it up, so we've got the younger and the older kids separated as well as by sex, it's separated. And youth group, we talk about issues like self-esteem, drug and alcohol prevention, problems at home, problems at school, just giving them some support amongst themselves. And then Friday nights, it's real open, so we've got movie night, we have some recreational outings we go on, we've got pool table, ping pong table, just a place for them to come and stay off the streets and out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What do you find are the problems that kids are encountering these days? And the age range that you're seeing kids are like 12 to
18. In fact, initially that's what the teen center was designed for, but we are seeing a lot of younger kids coming down to the center. That need is there as well. So ideally we would like the center to be open 4 nights a week, where we could structure it 2 nights for the younger kids, 2 nights for the older kids. The problems that they're coming to us with, we've got continued drug problems as far as alcohol, marijuana, things like that. Gangs, we're seeing an increase in that, and we started a new program, which I wanted to plug a little bit, Gangbusters, and that is where we've got some kids, about 15 or 20 kids in this program, where upon learning about gang graffiti in the area, and our calls come from like the Sheriff's Department or other service providers, they will call us as far as letting us know where the graffiti is, and we'll send this group out to take care of that. Because we want to take a proactive stand that gangs will not be tolerated in our community. Mm-hmm. So.
How many youth do you have involved in that activity and some of the other things that the group
in youth group,
does?
we've got probably about 12 in each group, and there's 4 groups. As far as the Gangbusters, like I said, there's about 15 or 20 in that group, and there's probably about 50 to 60 members we have at the teen center, but on an average night it's between 35 and 40, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Now you also offer a summer youth program. Can
Correct.
you tell us a little bit about
Right.
that?
Our main focus there is basically providing them with some fun. A lot of kids that we get coming to the teen center don't have those opportunities to do some fun trips like Great America and canoeing and things like that. And we also have youth group during the summer months as well. So.
It sounds like the activities that you're providing for the kids also help them in building their self-esteem, as you
Absolutely.
mentioned, and that makes it easier for them to turn down if they're offered drugs or alcohol.
Right, right. And we're trying to get in there early and do some real prevention so that we have kids who can become, good, upstanding citizens.
I think some of them might be a little surprised at how easily available alcohol and drugs are to kids these days, because
It's
we
real
weren't
accessible.
confronted with that same problem.
Right.
Now, when you counsel with families, as you mentioned, if you have a child with a problem, you also try to get the adults, the parents in the family,
Right.
maybe other family members involved too. And opening up the lines of communication, is that always easy, or is that?
No, we wish it were easy, but no, it takes some time and takes some work. But our counselors work, I think, real diligently with that, and they really, I think, are a very caring group of people. So I think they're easy to work with, and people usually, find them real easy to talk with. And
Now, would you, for instance, maybe talk with the child, with a youth counselor, and then talk with the parents about what they feel, and get both sides of the story, what they feel the problems have been in the past, and then try to get them together to talk
Right.
about it?
We do that quite frequently, have joint sessions where normally I'm the advocate for the youth and I'm working and developing where they feel more comfortable talking with their parents about issues. And then we'll have sessions with the family therapist and me there as well. So.
Now, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the work that you do with chemical dependency.
we have various groups that work with chemical dependency. We have individual counseling. We are also the DASA licensed agency to do evaluations for DUIs. We also provide remedial education classes and level 2 treatment in conjunction with DUI.
Now, when you say evaluations for DUI, what does that involve?
That involves some assessment and
Whether maybe this was an isolated incident or?
right. Some history of the individual and some counseling during that whole process as well.
Now, you also offer services for, or try to get into large businesses and let them know that you have these services available. I think oftentimes employers, when they encounter an employee with a problem, they just really don't know what to do about it. It's kind of a touchy issue.
Yes, it is, and we've just really begun to work a little bit more on that, and we're hoping to get into more of the businesses in the spring, and that's really important, I think, that people, especially for supervisors, to realize that when people have a problem, that there are sources available to them. And you asked some of the things that we do in the ChemDep area. I just want to go back to that. Sometimes we're not able to provide all of the counseling that people need in that area. Sometimes they need inpatient, for example, or maybe intensive outpatient. And if we can't provide those services at our agency, we will refer them to agencies or hospitals that can provide them, and then we may act as case managers in that process.
Now, you provide different types of counseling, and you mentioned a couple of them, including family, group, and individual counseling. And I imagine, depending on the degree and the severity and the type of case it is, you would decide which is most appropriate for a person who may have some problems.
Right. Everyone who comes to the agency goes through what we call an intake procedure, and that's done with me, and it usually lasts about an hour to an hour and a half. And we gather all kinds of information and family histories and that type of thing. And after that, they're assigned to a counselor that we think best suits their needs as they're presented. And so then if they need further treatment someplace else or whatever, we will link them up with that as well.
Now, do you offer evening appointments too for
Yes.
people who are working?
Yes, we do. We're open from 9 to 8 Mondays through Thursdays.
Okay. Now, what is your staff like? Who makes up your staff, and what kind of backgrounds do those people have?
We have 6 full-time counselors and 2 part-time counselors. They are all either bachelor's or master's degree. We are social workers. We have consulting psychiatrists to our staff, and we also have a physician that we consult with as needed. And we have 1 licensed clinical social worker or psychiatric social worker as well.
And now the fee schedule and the payment of fees is done on a sliding scale. Can you describe how that is worked out with patients?
We set people's fees according to a percentage of their gross income. It usually works out to about $1 per thousand. And we have a minimum fee of $6 and a maximum fee of $60. So everyone falls someplace in between there. And we accept insurance plans as well. So.
Now, we seem to be coming out of a difficult recessionary period, and I imagine that adds a lot of stress to a lot of families.
Yes, it has. And we've seen a lot of stress in families. And I think the most important thing as far as human services goes, and as far as fees and that, is that it's our job to serve people. And we will do that, and we will work with them. We're not there to add to their burdens, so we will really go out of our way to make financial payment plans available or to work with them on what's affordable, and we just feel that's real important to be there to help them when they need us the most.
Now, the
Right.
rest of your funding, where does that come from?
We're an arm of county government, so some of our funding comes from taxes, some of it comes from grants, and the rest from fees. So it's a
And-
combination
right.
of sources.
We also have
United
funding
Way.
through the Kendall County Youth Service Board, through the
Right.
Department of Children and Family Services as well.
Now, Melissa, you mentioned that you would like to have your center open 4 nights a week
Right.
instead of just 2. Do you see that happening in the future, and what do you need
We're
to
real
make that
hopeful
happen?
that will happen, and we've done our best to do some fundraisers to bring in some funds so that we can do that. We're always, looking for support within the community so that we can open additional hours, but
Right.
and we're looking at grants and things too. So.
And what you said you'd like to accomplish with that is have some nights where the younger kids can come in on their own, and it would just
have
be a younger group.
some activities that are specifically focused for different age groups. So.
I think the statistics that we see with smoking, for example, it's younger girls who are mainly on the increase, and so you'd like to reach some of these younger people.
Sure, right,
Now, the actual teen center is located in Yorkville.
right.
Can you talk about some of the things that are in the teen center, some of the activities that are there?
Well, we have a lot of rec equipment, that being the pool table, ping pong table, a lot of video games, basketball, pop-a-shot thing. We have a lot of, with the incentive program, we have a lot of things that the kids are able to purchase, and I didn't really talk a lot about that, but each night that the kids are down there, they're able to earn points, and those are turned into TLC dollars, and you get points for respecting staff, helping with doing homework, helping with cleanup, basically, not getting into trouble, not fighting, and at the end of the week, you can turn those in to get those TLC dollars and then buy different things, snacks, clothing, school supplies, things like that. So we've tried to, come from a punitive approach where we're punishing the kids to more positive, reinforcing these kids to do some positive, good things. So,
And you also always have someone there supervising the kids.
absolutely. We've got 3 adult staff, and then we've got volunteers that help too, that go through a 8 to 10 week volunteer training. In order
Well,
to
it
do
sounds like a
that.
great
So-
alternative to kids going home to an
Right.
empty house maybe,
Right.
and no one knows whether they're coming straight home or out hanging around.
Do you see it having a big impact on some of the people that are down there to have a place to go to? Like
We've
that?
seen a real change in some of the kids, and initially when we first started the center, we were getting a lot of real needy kids down there, and I don't mean needy as far as them acting out, but needy that they maybe not come from families where a lot of opportunities are there. We've really expanded out where we're seeing a real healthy balance. I think we have, a lot of good kids, some kids that are struggling, and, so we see a lot of different types of kids down there. But,
Great. I want to thank you for coming and sharing with us about Kendall County Family Services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be back with more right after this.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Jesse the Law Torres and Danny Pittman, and they're both from the Aurora Police Department. I'd like to welcome you both to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, how did you get your name?
Jesse the Law. A buddy of mine, Joe Benavides, he's a post office worker. He happened to give me that name, and it just stood with me. And I used it ever since. It's been about 4 years now. So I like it. It somehow it brings out the name, plus it represents what I'm doing as a police officer. So I feel comfortable.
Now, you've got a professional boxing show coming up on March 13th at West Aurora High School. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this. This is the second that you've put on, right?
It's our second show. It's a joint effort by our police union and our police benevolent and protective association. People are selected from both organizations. We formed a committee and we put the show on to help raise funds for the youth organizations in Aurora.
Now, Jesse, you'll be fighting in that match. Can you tell me about your opponent and some of the strategy you're looking at incorporating into that match?
Well, I can't wait for March 13th to get in the ring. Lamont Buchanan, from what I know, he's a hard puncher. He's out of St. Louis, Missouri. He's gonna come here to fight, and that's what I'm hoping that he'll do, because I want to give the people their money's worth, and they will get their money's worth. Overall, I'm a hard puncher. He's a hard puncher, so it's going to be a very exciting fight.
Now, how long have you been boxing, and how did you get into boxing?
I've been fighting since 14 years old. Overall, about 16 years, but actively pro about 5 years. I just picked it up as a hobby, just a hobby. I've always been good with my hands, and a hobby. It went a little bit further than a hobby. It just stayed with me, and I'm here.
What kind of record do you have?
I have 13 wins, 10 knockouts, 4 losses, and 4 draws. It's a good record. It's not, I'm not burnt out. I'm not burnt out, but it's a good record.
Now, how often do you get to fight? I'm not aware that there is a lot of boxing going on around here, but...
Well, if you bring in approximately between 7 or 8 fights a year, you're standing good. You're really being busy. It's when you start lacking, giving 2 fights or 3 fights a year, then something is wrong.
And do you fight in the Chicagoland area, or?
I fight throughout the Midwest. Chicagoland area is most of my where I picked up all my records. But I fight in other states also. I fought in Paris twice. I fought in Inglewood, California once. But they invite me, I'll take it.
Now, I imagine something like this requires a lot of stamina. And what kind of workout do you go through to prepare yourself?
Yeah, it's a vigorous workout. You've got to be dedicated. If you're not, you don't even get involved with boxing. It's a matter of constantly running 5 days or 6 days out of the week, putting in 4 or 5 miles, and then going to work out 2.5 to 3 hours a day. So I have no social life. I've planned everything with my boxing. It just drains me.
Do you find that this gives you an in with some of the kids, your boxing, and if they have an interest in that?
Yeah, I call them the little gladiators. Yeah, they look up to me. They try to pick up some of my moves, and they ask me for advice, and I'm there to give it to them. Boxing is like, I don't recommend boxing unless you're really, your heart's desire to be in it. But if it's just an alternative for the kids, it's there, it exists. And we want the people to know that it's a safe sport. It's not as it is brutal, but it's not as brutal as one want to think it is.
And you mentioned that it is good to keep in mind that it's a sport, and it's probably not a good idea to decide to make a living boxing.
You're absolutely right. It's no fun getting hit upside the head. It isn't. But yeah, I don't recommend boxing to those who they don't want to participate 100%. It wouldn't be fair to them. And they're just fooling themselves.
What is it about boxing that motivates you to stay in it?
I like the recognition. I like people to tell me, that was a good fight. Keep up the good work, and I feel that I'm good enough in it, and I'm good, in what I do. And like I said, it takes 100%, and I'm willing to provide that 100%. That's why I'm still active.
Now, Danny, how many matches will we see at this?
At this show, there'll be 6 bouts, all different classes. We have 2 heavyweights, we have 2 middleweight bouts, then Jesse's lightweight. There's a full range of boxing on this, over 50 rounds of boxing.
Great.
That's going to be held on the 13th.
Yes.
Where is it going to be at?
West Aurora High School in the gymnasium, and the doors open at 6:30.
And where can people get tickets for this?
Ticketmaster, in the Ticketmaster service, downtown Aurora, you can stop in at Merchants Bank or all their branch offices. The Aurora Policemen's Credit Union at the police station. You can buy tickets there also.
Now, other than Chicago, we usually don't have a chance to see matches like this in the Roarland area.
Right, you're right. It's very rare. There's a few amateur bouts bouncing around, but nothing as a fine show that this is going to be with big name people, Olympic champions, Golden Glove champions are all coming into Aurora to take part in this.
Now, Jesse, have you ever been knocked out?
Not professionally. I've been knocked out one time in amateur. This was back in 1978, and it don't feel too good. No, it don't. But since that time, no, I have not.
You mentioned a minute ago that it's not fun to get hit upside the head, but the idea is not to get hit in the
That's
head.
all.
Right?
It's a thinking game. It's a mentally and physically type of sport. You just don't go in there and put two gloves on and think that you're going to be successful and come out, nicely. It don't happen. It's a thinking game, and you constantly every round that you go, it's a strategy. It's a skill. You gotta be on your toes.
That's probably why it's a good thing for some kids that maybe instead of street fighting or that sort of thing, if they can put their energies toward boxing. As you mentioned, you got to keep at it every day and stay in shape, so it really gives them a different avenue to look forward to.
That it does. Like I said, I don't recommend it to everyone because boxing is not made for everyone. But those who do follow boxing will know that it's not just putting on two gloves and let's go, whatever we can do. It don't happen that way. You got to be sincere about it. Otherwise, just do it just to get in shape. That's about it. Not for a career type of thing. It won't work.
Now, have ticket sales started already?
Yes,
Are
tickets went on
sales
sale
brisk?
last week, and they're moving briskly, so which is good. It looks like it's going to be a nice show and a packed house.
Okay.
How many people did you have the last time? And how many
Last
do you
time we
expect?
had over, I think, 1,300 or so, and we're definitely shooting for 2,000 at least this time.
Now, will there be tickets at the door, or do you need to get tickets ahead
Yes,
of
there
time?
will be tickets at the door.
Okay. And then once again, this is March 13th at West Aurora High School.
Right.
I want to thank you for being with us, and good luck, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again tomorrow on Fox Valley Today.
We'll see you then.
On the other, and so it's you normally carry a lot of production equipment, and he was about comparable to that.
Sounds like a busy day for you.
Yeah, and I can't imagine right now having that around the clock. And my house is not baby-proof, so it was really running around and making sure that he wasn't grabbing things off the TV or whatever, hurting himself was it was a full-time job, and so I have a new respect for all those mothers out there that work and have kids. I don't know how they do it. So. But,
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, what do we have on our show today? I was.
Well, we'll be
hearing-
talking about sports injuries
Okay.
and some common cures for them, but treatment and as well as some prevention methods. So if you've got maybe a sore knee from football or tennis elbow, those are some common ones. We've got some methods that might do the trick for you.
Well, that sounds great, but you have some news, right?
That's right. News
Okay.
is first.
Good.
And here we go. That cool weather from Monday is back in the forecast for the remainder of the work week, and I'll have more on the forecast in just a moment. The quiet town of Plainfield is shocked after a Plainfield teenager is shot. Police found 18-year-old Chris Pesavento slumped over the driver's seat of a black pickup truck parked in the 200 block of James Street on Memorial Day. Pesavento was taken to St. James Hospital in Joliet and later transferred to Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, where he's listed in serious condition in the spinal cord intensive care unit. Plainfield police say several groups of teenagers met in the 200 block of James Street early Memorial Day to allegedly settle a prior argument. Witnesses say suspects displayed an air rifle and a handgun before many of those teenagers took off. 4 suspects are in police custody. They are 19-year-old Stephen Bennett of Plainfield, 18-year-old Rick Wellner of Plainfield, 17-year-old Quad Cole of Joliet, and a 16-year-old juvenile. Well, the Aurora Crime Stoppers are offering up to $1,000 in reward money, and that's for the information leading to the arrest of a robber. The unknown suspect is wanted from a strong-armed robbery on Sunday, May 23rd, at the Hears Health Club in the 900 block of North Lake Street. Suspect entered the business, grabbed the owner, and demanded money from the cash register. Suspect is described as a black male, about 6'2", 160 pounds, wearing a blue nylon jacket and black jeans. If you have information that could lead to the arrest of the suspect, call Aurora Crime Stoppers at 892-1000. If the information you give leads to the arrest of the suspect, you could receive up to $1,000 in reward money. Again, the number to call is 892-1000. North Aurora Village trustees voted unanimously to allow the village clerk a pay raise. Until now, Clerk Linda Mitchell had not been given a pay raise in 4 years. Trustees gave the go-ahead for a 10% increase and agreed to allot $1,200 to $1,800 per month towards the new position of deputy clerk. With the board's generosity came a 3% wage increase for all village employees and decided in favor of a new part-time position for an employee on the police department. The Budget and Finance Committee reportedly suggested those pay raises. Well, we're back on the cool side of things for the remainder of the week. Today's forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies with occasional showers, possibly a thunderstorm with an unseasonal high of 60. Tonight, scattered showers, low 47 to 50, and mostly cloudy skies are back tomorrow. Continued cool, the high 65. Then for Friday, early morning sunshine, turning partly cloudy by afternoon. Chance for late showers with the high of 65. And that's a look at this morning's news and weather. I'm Michelle Fiore. And welcome back to Fox Valley Today. Joining us now, Carolyn O'Neill with the Physical Performance Place through Good Samaritan Hospital. Thanks for joining us. Now we're talking about sports injuries, and maybe you want to start a little bit by telling us what your place of work does.
Well, the Physical Performance Place does physical therapy of all types. We see any type of injury from back and neck problems to shoulders, elbows, knees, and ankles are very common. Anything that deals with increasing range of motion and strength or decreasing pain and swelling, we try and do that. We need to have a prescription from a physician, so we are really unable to treat except on the advice of a physician, but when someone comes in, we do an evaluation and make sure that we feel everything corresponds to what the physician has already told us, and then we take it from there.
So there are therapists that work with the people that come in with the injuries. Are you one of the therapists? Or?
Yes, I am. I'm a therapist. I'm also the manager of the facility.
Okay.
Now this summer there'll be probably a lot of, I don't know, a lot more injuries with the increase in activity.
Oh, sure. Spring and summer are very popular for all different kinds of activities, soccer, softball, volleyball, all different types of things. And especially someone who hasn't done very much over the winter time, is not very much into skiing or skating or anything like that, hasn't done very much and is probably a little bit more out of condition than he or she should be. So that is a very predisposing factor to incurring some type of injury.
So that's when injuries are going to happen, when they haven't been as active
Right.
all winter long. Now, what do you suggest for these people in order to prevent those injuries?
Well, if you can avoid the cycles of high activity and then periods of low activity, that's one of the worst things you can do, because while you're coming back up to the peak of your performance, you're more likely to have some type of an injury. You lose your strength, you can lose some motion, you lose endurance very quickly if you don't use your muscles. And by not doing that and then all of a sudden starting to do something, you're really going to hurt. Usually you're going to pull a muscle or sprain a ligament or something like that. So the best thing you can do is, once you're in shape, is try and maintain that shape. Even if it's not the same type of sport, if you're into working out at a health club or stationary bicycling, any of the Stairmasters or treadmills or other indoor activities are great to maintain your cardiovascular shape as well as muscle fitness.
And you know, it is tough over the winter, especially if you don't belong to a health club, to keep in shape. It's cold, you don't really want to go out and get on the running shoes and take a trip around the block or whatever. You know, there's not a whole lot you can do over the winter. You know, any kinds of activities we can do, maybe stretches or something. Would stretching be okay to do and to maintain something?
Well, you should always stretch prior to doing any exerting activity, but the thing that most people don't understand is that you should not stretch a cold muscle. That's one of the worst things you can do, because your muscle will then it's called rebound, where you're lengthening it a little bit, and then all of a sudden the muscle says to your brain, hey, I'm being stretched, I'm not ready to be stretched, and it wants to tighten up again. And that's when you're going to have some kind of an injury. It's going to pull, it's going to hurt. So you really need to warm up, do a little bit of walking or light jogging or something like that for 10 or 15 minutes even, just to get your blood flowing, to increase the heat in your body so the muscles are ready to be stretched. So that's a very common error that people will do that will lead to an injury.
It must be common, because I even grew up hearing that we should stretch before we run, and stretch before you've done anything even. So that's not
really,
true.
that's a myth, yeah.
Okay.
Wow. What about, we talk about sports injuries here, and we think of young people that are, physically fit and doing all this stuff. There's a lot of older persons that have the same type of injury, correct, as a sports
sure.
injury? What's involved with that, and what do those viewers have to do with your facility?
Well, it doesn't just have to be an 18-year-old athlete that can get some of these injuries. We're finding more and more and becoming more aware of maintaining healthy lifestyles and habits, starting young, but throughout your entire life. And those people that are getting into any other types of activities, walking is very popular. You've heard about the mall walking, things like that. My grandparents do it all the time. They need to maintain their health just as much as a younger person does, probably even more, because their bodies are getting a little bit older. But you can still have the same type of knee injuries or ankle sprains or rotator cuff tear in the shoulder. Anything that can happen to someone young can also happen to someone older. And it doesn't have to happen necessarily during sports. Someone can tear a ligament in a knee playing football, while someone else can tear that same ligament slipping on the ice.
Now, a lot of, I think, older people are worried about slipping and breaking their hips. They see a lot of friends that have that problem. What can we do to prevent that? Like now, maybe is the time for me to start preparing for my old age. What's involved with broken bones?
Well, I'm sure you've heard of the calcium loss that usually occurs, especially in older women. But what you can do to prevent that is not only consider taking calcium supplements after a consultation with your doctor, but exercise is a very good way to maintain good bone health. The activity of the muscle pulling on the bone maintains that calcium in the bone, keeps it strong, and prevents or minimizes risk of injury even on falling. So someone who has a little bit more muscle mass and bone mass with the same type of slip and fall may not break their hip or hurt their ankle.
Now, I'm sure that some of the treatments for such thing as shoulders and and hip joints are probably similar.
Sure.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Well, the hip and the shoulder are both what we call ball and socket joints, where you've got part of the joint that looks like this and part of the joint that looks like this. And of course, this is going to be the shoulder part or the leg part, and then here's your pelvis or your shoulder girdle. So you can see it kind of moves in and out like this. Well, the problem with the shoulder is that where the ball fits into the socket is very flat, so you can tear ligaments and muscles in your shoulder very easily. The good part about that is that your shoulder then has great range of motion. You can do so many things with it, but then you sacrifice a little bit of the stability for that mobility. One of the things that's very common is a rotator cuff injury, and that can happen with almost anything. It can be playing volleyball and serving or going up for a spike, something like that, and then just tearing the muscle. Or it can be a repetitive injury where if you're at work and you do a lot of overhead activity or reaching, those kind of things, you can irritate the muscle near the joint, and then all of a sudden one day it's just going to say, hey, I've had enough, and it'll tear either partially or completely. So there's a lot of problems that can happen with that. With the hip, it's got a little bit less motion, but because its socket is more round, you've got more stability. So even though they are very similar, there's a few differences in there too. Of course, your leg muscles are very much larger than the ones in your shoulder, so it's a little bit harder to do something to that joint than it would be for the shoulder joint.
That's a lot of really good information. We also want to talk when we come back from this next break about the symptoms and what to do to prevent those symptoms. So why don't you stay with us, and we'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to Fox Valley Today. We're talking to the Physical Performance Place, which is affiliated with Good Samaritan Hospital. And Carolyn, before we left for break, we were talking a little bit about different kinds of treatments, and we were mentioning about hips and shoulders, that they're kind of socket joints and they're very similar. What other kinds of treatments can you suggest for maybe somebody with a knee problem, recurring knee problem?
Well, knees are very complex because they've got a cartilage in between the bones and several different ligaments that hold it in place. The knee basically just does two things. It bends and it straightens, but it also has a little bit of rotation at the very end so that when you need to lock your knee and get a lot of stability, you can do so. And that's where some of the problem comes in. A lot of people that do skiing are very prone to injuring the ligaments on the inside and the outside of the knee. There's also another one that's very commonly either partially or completely torn. It's called your ACL, or anterior cruciate ligament. That prevents the translation of the lower tibia bone on the femur or thigh bone. And it's very important for things like skiing and football and racquetball, a lot of sports where you're doing pivoting and a lot of motion. We see a lot of those types of injuries. Nowadays, it's very common for them to be surgically repaired by a physician, and then they come and see us. And what we do is we call them modalities, things that help get rid of pain and swelling. We use electricity and heat and cold, ultrasound waves, all different types of things that help get rid of pain. But that's only the first part of it. We need then to balance out the muscles, make sure that they're working. I'm not sure if you're aware, but once a ligament is sprained or elongated, it never goes back to its original length. It's not elastic like a tendon would be. So once that's sprained, say in your ankle, You need to rely on very strong, healthy muscles to prevent another sprain of that same ankle. So you need to make sure that your muscles are very well balanced, they're strong, and that's where some education comes in. We need to make sure that not only are you able to go about doing your everyday activities once you leave the physical performance place, but that you know how to maintain that strength. One of the things that we do is go to a local health club with each of our patients, if they so desire, and take them through their average workout. We would tell them which machines they should do, which ones they should avoid, suggest possible weights for them to start, and give them progression so that they know exactly what they should be doing, and they take responsibility for their own healing and improvement.
That's real interesting because a lot of the professionals that work at the health clubs may not be aware of the medical reasons behind some of their issues regarding what machines they use.
That's correct. We at the Physical Performance Place do some pretty crazy things with some of our machines, and we don't use them in just the standard way. So if, say, a personal trainer at the health club were to see what one of our patients might be doing, they would say, well, let me correct your technique. You're really not doing it correctly. But the patient then would have the responsibility of saying, well, my therapist told me that I should be doing it this way for this purpose. So even if you're using one specific machine, it doesn't mean you have to do it for the one purpose that it was intended. We have to be a little creative sometimes.
Talking about working out at health clubs, a lot of times we see, people go and weight train, and sometimes they build up certain muscles, and then they avoid other muscles, such as maybe building up biceps real big and not working the back of their arm, the triceps.
Right.
In something like that, is that harmful to build up one muscle and not the other? Or?
Well, harmful might be a little bit of a strong word, but it's going to be detrimental to that person. The thing that comes to mind is typically the muscle-bound man that's walking along the beach, and he swings his arms and everything. The problem can be that he has developed his biceps so much and neglected his triceps that because of the muscle imbalance, he has lost some of the range of motion at the elbow. So because he's doing all these curls like this, he never straightens his elbow out all the way. He may not be able to do that. This muscle may be so tight that it won't allow him to stretch it out all the way. Now, I'm showing a little stereotype there, and it can happen to women too, but it's more commonly the men that tend to do that. And
So
it's
they're-
usually in the upper body.
So they're really not just walking like this just to make themselves look like,
No,
I'm tough.
there is a physiological reason for that. But of course, if I'm at a health club working out, I can't go up to them and say anything because I'm a woman and I don't know about working out, even though that's
right.
my profession. So I'd love to be a people watcher and just look at what they're doing and wish I could tell them something, but I know better and think, well, I'll see them in my clinic in a little while.
Yeah, or maybe now that they've seen you on the show, they're going to have a new respect for you and say, well, you had a lot of good information there. You brought us these neat sports injury guides, and you call them the slide guide, I guess.
Right.
Maybe we could go down a few of them and name some of the symptoms, and if people out there have those, we can talk about what preventions or treatments are involved.
Right. This little guide goes through just about everything of common injuries, not only what you can do to treat them, but how you yourself might have an idea of the type of injury. Sometimes it's hard to know if you should go see a physician or if it's something that will just heal on its own. And most people usually are willing to wait a short time and say, well, I hurt my ankle, maybe it's swelled up a little bit, but is it really bad or isn't it? They probably know that they've had a sprained ankle. There are several different ligaments on the inside and the outside of the ankle, and it's very common to turn your foot to the inside, and the ligaments on the outside just get stretched too much, and because of that, your body acts as a protective mechanism, and it sends fluid to the area to prevent further injury. So your body sees swelling as a protective thing, while you can look at your ankle and say, oh, it looks like a grapefruit, what am I supposed to do? Usually you can wait a few days, ice it. Ice is always a good way to get rid of swelling, but if you know that you can't walk on it or if it hasn't gotten any better over 2 or 3 days, then it's probably time to see a physician. Sometimes if you know you've had an ankle sprain before, you know what it feels like, you can try and do the icing or ACE Rapid to prevent any further swelling. Elevation is always a good thing because that uses gravity to help eliminate swelling also. But one thing you usually don't want to do when you get something that's as swollen as an ankle is put heat on it, because that will tend to increase the swelling rather than decrease it.
So it sounds like when in doubt, ice it.
In general, yeah. Usually the first 2 to 3 days after an injury. After that, heat might feel better. Say with a pulled muscle, cold is going to make it tighten up a little bit more. The heat will make it loosen up, increase the circulation, which is what you need to do to speed the healing of a muscle or tendon. So it depends on if it's ligamentous or if it's muscle or tendon. So there is a little bit of a difference.
Could we talk a little bit about heat stroke? Because that's something that, is that just because if we're going to be out in the sun a lot, that's going to occur? Or is it more likely to occur without, fluids in our bodies? Or how do we prevent that?
Well, from what I've heard, we're going to have a cooler than normal summer, so it may not be quite as bad this year. But anyone who exercises should really be careful of the time of day that they go out. Usually between noon and 3 o'clock is among the worst time because the sun is at its hottest. You need to make sure that if you're running or even walking outside that you take water with you, because that's one of the biggest problems with heat stroke or sunstroke is dehydration. You need to keep taking fluids, and it's very preventable. Heat stroke is not something that just occurs for no reason. Your body just kind of shuts down because it's not getting enough nutrients or enough fluid to keep everything running the way it should. So trying to avoid any strenuous exercise when it's 80, 85 degrees between the hours of about noon and 3 o'clock is a real good idea. If you know you're going to be doing a lot of physical activity, drink water or other fluids ahead of time to, again, prevent any possible danger.
Now I have a question regarding that. When I used to work for the YMCA, just during school and stuff, and we would go on hikes, and they'd give us these salt tablets to as a treatment, in case one of your kids had a sunstroke. They were supposed to drink water and salt. Is that a myth? What does salt have to do with dehydration?
Well, salt can help retain some of the fluid, which will theoretically prevent you from sweating it out or something like that. Okay. But it does pose other health hazards that you need to be aware of. The best thing to do, rather than trying to treat the sunstroke, would be to prevent it, and that would be with fluids.
Quickly, what are the most common types of sports injuries that you're treating?
Ankle sprains are very common. We see quite a few knee ligamentous injuries. We see them both pre- and post-surgical too. Sometimes the physician will say, well, we don't know if they need surgery or not. Let's try and do some rehab. Let's get the muscles a little bit stronger, see if they can take over for the ligament that might be partially torn. And if we don't have to, let's not do surgery. But sometimes it is warranted, and then we'll see them for muscle strengthening. Endurance and power training is a real big thing when you're talking about sports like football. Again, endurance training for track or cross-country type of athletes is very important. Those are the type of people that if they do have an ankle injury, strength is not nearly as important as the ability to maintain that strength over a period of time, which is known as endurance. Those types of things. We see a lot of rotator cuff injuries. Baseball pitchers are very much prone to that with the amount of force and speed that they have to move their arm to get the ball to go as fast as they would like it to. Those are all very, very common. One other thing that we see a lot of is back and neck problems from car accidents. So we treat them trying to increase their mobility, get them back to work if that's what they need to do.
Also, real quickly, I just wanted to sort of differentiate between a sprain, a dislocated something, and a break.
Well, a sprain is only for the ligaments. A strain would be for a muscle or a tendon. Basically what you're doing is breaking down some of the fibers in the muscle or the tendon or the ligament. Sometimes they can heal, and sometimes they heal in a slightly different fashion. So you're talking about a sprained ligament or a strained or pulled muscle. A bone break usually needs to be set by a physician. If you're talking about a finger or a toe, there's not a whole lot they can do about it, but something in the wrist or the leg, it needs immediate doctor's attention.
Thank you so much for being with us. We need to wrap it up. I think we're out of time, and we'll hope to see you again sometime.
Great.
We'll see you tomorrow. Good morning, I'm Michelle Fiore.
And I'm Pam Nelson, inviting you to stay with us next for Fox Valley Today.
When Illinois Benedictine College is getting set for Lincoln's Memorial train service's 130th anniversary. Stay tuned.
And good morning. Thanks for joining us again on a Thursday morning. Beautiful sunny day.
That's right, once again, holding our fingers, crossing them for good weather now.
Yes. And how about those Bulls?
Oh, hooray.
Pulled it off again, and they had me worried there in the third quarter.
Yeah. Gosh, I know, I was watching the first quarter. I have to admit, I turned it off for a while because I thought, oh gosh, they have a 10-point lead. They'll be doing okay.
Right.
You know, and turned it back on at the beginning of the fourth and was surprised.
It was down to a 2-point margin for
Yeah.
a while there, but they pulled it out, and I guess it just keeps us on the edge of our seats, right?
Yeah, what was the final score? About 100 to 92 or so?
101, I think, or 100 to 92. They won by 8 points.
8 points.
So, yes.
They pulled it off in the
Yes.
end.
We'll wait for the next game, right?
And Michael Jordan broke his silence treatment to the media, and he talked, and he said, well, he won't be talking about gambling, but he will be talking about his basketball, so.
Right. And we're going to be talking about the Lincoln train. It's a special exhibit that's going to be coming through the original route of the Lincoln funeral train when it went to Springfield from Washington, D.C. And we'll be talking more about that. And also, Joe Leidig will be with us to take a look at Fox Valley Theater. But first, we'll take a look at news with Michelle.
Well, there's nothing but sunny days in the forecast for the remainder of the week and the weekend. I'll have more on the forecast in just a moment. Water rescue teams have resumed their search of the Fox River this morning for a Batavia boy feared dead. North Aurora police say 3 teenagers were rafting on the Fox River, apparently traveling over the dam in North Aurora. 2 of the boys cleared the dam, the other was observed lying still in the water. Officers say they are informed that a man on a jet ski attempted to rescue the youth, but ended up being caught in the boil. The Warrenville man was able to break free and was rescued by a fellow jet skier. The man's condition is unknown this morning at Mercy Center Hospital. Water rescue teams from Aurora, Batavia, Geneva, St. Charles, Kane County, and Batavia Emergency Services, DuPage County Forest Preserve, and West Chicago were assisting the North Aurora Fire Department attempting to locate the missing youth. Names of the victims are being withheld until next of kin are notified. 2 men are in custody stemming from a domestic dispute at an Aurora restaurant. Police say Raymond Williams of the 600 block of Hammond had been arguing with his girlfriend in the parking lot of Taco Bell. It's located in the 1200 block of North Lake Street. 2 suspects reportedly approached Williams, taking exception to the argument. One of the suspects allegedly struck Williams over the head with a bottle. Williams was taken to Mercy Center, where he was treated with 14 stitches to close that wound. Hosea Martinez of the 200 block of Jefferson was taken into custody facing charges of aggravated battery, and Renee Delgado of the 900 block of Mountain was arrested for battery. The woman involved in the argument was reportedly uninjured in the dispute. State transportation officials have received backing on the proposed Fox Valley Freeway just when Governor Edgar was ready to end planning of the proposed project. The Hoffman Estates Village Board sprung into action after reports Edgar might end and nix the project due to the opposition he was hearing from most communities and most likely to be affected. Trustees of the Hoffman Estates Village Board voted unanimously in favor of endorsing a resolution which at least allows continuation of a project until a possible route for the freeway is identified. Trustees saw the possibility of reduced traffic congestion, improved traffic management, and more efficient north-south access. An area east of the Fox River is expected to be identified sometime this summer as a possible location for the Aurora-Elgin Freeway. Well, our forecast is calling for lots of sunshine today with a high of 82. Tonight, fair skies and mild. a low 56 to 59. Sunny and pleasant tomorrow, a high 78 to 81. And the sunshine continues for Saturday, warmer, a high 82 to 85. The outlook for Sunday is calling for another great day with temperatures in the middle 80s. And that's a look at this morning's news and weather. I'm Michelle Fiore.
Welcome back, and we're joined now by Dr. Philip Bean and Professor Wayne Wesolowski. They're both from Illinois Benedictine College. Nice to have you with us today.
Want to be here.
And we're going to be talking about the Lincoln Train exhibit that's going to be coming through the state of Illinois. And maybe you can tell us when it's going to be coming and what it is.
Well, the Lincoln Train project is an effort by Illinois Benedictine to remind people a little bit of our Illinois heritage with Abraham Lincoln's funeral train. And when President Lincoln was assassinated, there were 12 elaborate funerals all across the country. If you remember President Kennedy's funeral, imagine that being repeated 12 times across the country. So what we've created is a traveling exhibit that will go to Washington, D.C., hopefully in the fall of 1994, and follow the same route as the original train, stopping in the cities along the way, and eventually coming to Chicago and then proceeding down to Springfield to arrive May 3rd, 1995, which is 130 years to the day when the real train arrived.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did this all get started? Who began the project, and how did they put it together and so forth?
Well, we have a Lincoln collection at the college, which we've had for about 35 years. We had two really good model builders. One of them built homes remodeling Lincoln's home, and in conversation with Wayne decided that he would like to build the model for the train. And so from that connection, we will have the model home for Lincoln, and then the model train for the funeral car.
Now, you have quite a collection at Illinois Benedictine College. What are some of the different things people would find there if they came to see your collection?
Well, we have, excuse me, we have a death mask of the hands and the face of Lincoln. We have calling cards from Lincoln, which were recently donated to the college. We have 3 different models of the home and several different models of or pieces of his clothing. And in addition, we have something like 5,000 books and 50,000 other pieces of memorabilia of various kinds of Lincoln. The room that it's in is really quite crowded.
Mm-hmm. Now, Lincoln, of course, Lincoln is famous for Illinois, one of our best presidents, according to historians. And, but why Illinois Benedictine? Why is Illinois Benedictine College getting into the promotion of Lincoln?
Primarily it's because of our interest. We had the donation. We built on that donation with one collection of models, houses for Lincoln. Out of that collection and that building process, we published, or the people involved published, 2 different books on Lincoln and his home and his life in Springfield. And about that time, Wayne became interested in developing this particular type of model. Wayne's been a very, very extensive modeler for what, 20 years, 30 years?
30 years.
And so from that connection, we've just added to it as we've gone along.
I think we also think of it as part of our educational role, that today, if you're going to do something involved with history, with Star Wars and Nintendo, if we were to create a wonderful book about Lincoln and the Lincoln train, I don't think that many people really would be exposed to it. So this kind of a public exhibit, a traveling exhibit, something that will be in malls and public areas where thousands of people can see it, maybe can begin to direct people to think a little bit about our history, about traditional funerals, about what happened in those days, about how people responded. You know, that this, we'd also like, one of the reasons we're here today is the project won't move for more than a year, but we're interested in finding people who had relatives who maybe saw the train, whose great-great-grandfather was a conductor. We have some wonderful memorabilia that we're beginning to collect. Maybe Dr. Bean could tell you about a piece that we have here.
In fact, right after we made the original announcement in February of this year, one of our fellow colleagues at the college happened to come by and said, I heard about your Lincoln Train project. Would you people be interested in having a copy of the one of the original tassels that was actually on the train?
Wonderful.
And it turns out that his wife's family's was a ancestor was a superintendent on the train in Cleveland, and when he left the train, he happened to notice there was an extra tassel that didn't seem to be being used at the time, and it has remained in the family ever since then. Wow. And we're quite sure it's accurate because written into the bottom and becoming part of it is a little notice down here that says original tassel from the Lincoln funeral car. Mm-hmm. And it appears to be actually sewn into the project from the very beginning. And so this was just one of our own colleagues who had just never thought anyone would be interested in it.
It was beautiful. It looks like it's sort of goldish in color. Do you believe it's the original color of it?
It's wire. It's spun silver.
Mm-hmm.
You can touch it. You feel that this is actually wire.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's so many interesting things. I was just looking over some of the interesting facts that you brought along with you today. There was actually a special flag made for the train car that had an extra star for the president. I mean, just little facts like that. And you're looking for more of that type of information.
Exactly. We'd love to find first-person accounts. We've gotten some poems that people wrote for their families to remember the trip. We've been really fortunate that we found the great-great-grandson of the man who designed and built the presidential car. The model that we have here today is a model of what might be called Railroad One. It was designed for the president like Air Force One, that Lincoln had been doing traveling extensively toward the end of the war, but he always borrowed an executive car or just a coach from the local railroads. And it's not quite clear, but someone decided in the government structure that the military railroad system should build the president a private car. So this was the most opulent car on rails in 1865, with tufted upholstery and just gorgeous accoutrements inside the car, as well as the design of the car itself with multiple wheels for cushioned riding. But the interesting fact is the president never used it when he was alive, that he was assassinated before he had a chance to use it, so it was only used for his funeral.
I always feel like we're kind of special here in Illinois to have Lincoln as one of our past presidents. I'm sure every state is proud of their presidents, but is Lincoln the most popular past president?
Oh, by far, at least in the number of things that are produced about him, the books and the articles, thousands more than any other president, probably because of his role in the Civil War. The country came very, very close to coming apart, and Lincoln is, by historians and our people now looking back, are pretty much convinced that he saved it. Whether or not that's true or not is another fact, but he's given a great deal of credit for it. And then the other factor about Lincoln is that he was killed at the height of his success, not necessarily his popularity, because when he died, he was not a particularly popular president, but his assassination made him a martyr, and from that point on, his martyrdom has simply grown. If he had lived and had to work through Reconstruction, he might very well have suffered perhaps the fate of someone like George Bush, who was incredibly popular a year before he came up for election, and then other things happened and he lost his popularity. But that didn't happen to Lincoln, and so he became and remained very popular.
You brought some photos with you. Maybe we should take a look at those now.
Okay.
And you can tell us what it is we're seeing.
All right, the trip itself went over 1,662 miles through. We've recorded 188 cities that the train passed through. It started in Washington, D.C., and then followed a rather circuitous route up across the whole northern tier of states, passing through the major northern cities. And as we said, there were 12 funerals, so that from the time Lincoln died until the time he was interned in Springfield, 20 days passed. So in 1865, one of the newspaper accounts said there were copious amounts of aromatic flowers used later and later in the trip. These were open coffin funerals.
But it gave the people a chance to experience and pay their tribute as they passed through. I guess sometimes even in the country there would be throngs of people.
Apparently the train never went over 20 miles an hour for the entire 1,600 miles. And as it went through crossroads, went through small towns, it didn't particularly stop, but it slowed down. Mm-hmm. And the project that we have named this project, The Lincoln Train is Coming. And we did it in part because we wanted to give people a chance to get involved up front. And as we've said, we've already received some interesting hints, and the individual who contacted us actually is living in Waukegan for the descendants of the people who built the train.
Oh, wonderful.
And we've heard from people in St. Louis, and just yesterday I got a call from someone in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, who had heard about the project and was calling us with a tip. And so it's been very fascinating to get the involvement of various types of people as we came along.
Will the model be about the size of this train that we see here in front of us today?
Yeah, this is the model under construction right now, but it's only 1/3 of the exhibit. That this is the president's private car. We're also going to have a second car roughly the same size that was the officer's car. Contrary to some rumors, Mrs. Lincoln did not make the funeral trip. She did not attend the funeral. But her son Robert was the only representative from the family who came along. But the train was as long as 9 cars with political people, dignitaries, governors that would get on and off the train. And so it was just a huge event as it traveled through all these towns. We'll also have a Civil War locomotive that I'm beginning to discover things about 1865 engineering, that the locomotives were nothing like locomotives we'd even think of in 1900. And they were painted in gaudy colors, reds and greens and bright orange smokestacks that each engineer kind of treated the locomotive as his own. And so they would add their own scroll work and details to it. So we'll have a very elaborate, large locomotive that goes with it.
Now, your son is working along with you, helping you build these models?
Right. My son is a sophomore chemistry major at the college, and most of the project is done with casting materials, but we do urethane casting for the parts. Phil, if you could give me one of the, that's down below it. That's set. And the pieces underneath. What we do is I would make a master pattern, and the master pattern then is coated with a rubber material. And then when the rubber material sets up, there are cavities in the rubber. We pour a liquid plastic into that and then pop out finished parts.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
So you can see the cavities there. And then
this is nice for the students at the college. Do they get a chance to?
Right. I've done some of this in summer school classes where we did some parts photo engraving that we did in the courtyard using the sun as the source. And we talk about all the chemistry that's involved here. So then we can talk about some of this at a later time.
Okay, we have a couple more photos to look at too.
Okay. In the course of the trip, this is at the end of the life of the car, that the presidential car after the trip was sold to the Union Pacific Army surplus. And it was used by the Union Pacific as an executive's car. It was sold to a railroad in Colorado, downgraded to a track worker's car. It came back for the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, and then was sent to Minneapolis for a commercial exhibit and burned up in a fire in 1911. So we have a couple of pieces of chain that may have come from the car, from the fire of the car, but they're undocumented. So the actual presidential car is gone and had a very short life as a presidential car, but a unique piece of history.
Okay, so 1994 is when the exhibit is actually going to start its travels.
Moving. Now, the photo that you're seeing now is a photo of the presidential car outfitted with all of its bunting, and the silver tassels are there. That's right. The one that we have
here.
Wonderful. Now,
and
if
the
people
man standing up there, that was looks
not
a lot
Lincoln.
like Lincoln.
No, we think it's Pinkerton, the detective, who was responsible for security on the trip in, and may have worked on the way out.
If people are interested in becoming more involved, or if they have some recollections to pass along to you from family members, that sort of thing, how would they contact you?
They can get in touch with either one of us at the college. Our phone number is area code 708-960-1500. And in fact, this Saturday we're going to have the annual meeting of the Lincoln Group of Illinois, which is headquartered at the college, and the train and the various parts that you see here will be on exhibit. And that will be from 12 until 4 on this Saturday at the college, and attendance is free. There's no admission charge. If they want to come, they just can show up. We're going to have several presentations on other aspects of Lincoln, as well as having the car on exhibit for the benefit of the members of the Lincoln Group or any member of the public.
And how often does the Lincoln Group meet?
We meet 3 times a year, once in June at the college and twice in September in Springfield, once in October and once in February on the 12th every
Okay.
year.
So if you're interested, maybe you can get more information about the Lincoln Group or the train exhibit. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Joe Leidig.
And we're back now with Joe Leidig to find out what's happening in the Fox Valley as far as theater goes. Joe, nice to have you here as always.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Fox Valley Today. Congratulations today to Carlton Fisk
Right.
for last night making
Broke a record?
breaking a record. And did you happen to see the game?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. But I did hear that they gave him a Harley Davidson. Bo Jackson drove it out on the field for him, and it was a real big celebration.
Mhm. Now, this was, as I understand it, a record for catching the most number of games.
That's what
Is
I
that
heard.
right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yep. He's been in the business a long time.
Mm-hmm. And we were also talking about the Pepsi tamperings, and things have sort of died down over that recently. And I guess they have not documented that any of these reported tamperings were really actual happenings.
That's right. They kind of are believing now that it was a nationwide hoax. Perhaps the first one, though, in Seattle that was reported, that may have been a legitimate one. They're still, not saying for sure, but they're thinking now that the characteristics of the ones that followed in the next few days across the country, that those may have been a hoax.
People trying to jump on the bandwagon and maybe get some money out of the Pepsi Corporation?
Sure. There were cases reported in 23 states in the next few days, and the reports, that the hypodermic needles came from different kinds of bottling plants that were made, in different sections of the country, which really doesn't fit along with a legitimate tampering.
Right.
And also they're saying that the claims, that they just weren't legitimate.
And I guess that they've got things so well documented that they can tell from a can even what shift it was made on at a particular plant. So I guess after the Tylenol scares, manufacturers are pretty cognizant of this problem, that could occur, and they've obviously taken lots of steps to make sure that, to try to ensure that these things don't happen. So.
Sure. And that's another good point. They said that the the cans that were found, that they had been made in different months. They weren't all made at one time.
Right.
So that kind of
unlikely that it was a real tampering problem. And that's good to know. And we'll take a look at news now with Michelle.
Well, some warm and sunny weather could give way to the dark and gloomy thunderstorms in the Fox Valley in the next 48 hours. I'll have more in the forecast coming up. Rolando Cruz on death row for the 1983 kidnapping, rape, and murder of 10-year-old Janine Nicario of Naperville may be receiving another trial. The Illinois Supreme Court is hearing arguments today that enough important mistakes were made in the trial to necessitate another hearing. Cruz's lawyers believe a detailed confession by convicted child killer Brian Dugan, claiming he alone committed the crime, should be heard in a new trial. However, Dugan has refused to testify in a courtroom unless he receives immunity from the death sentence. The state does not believe Dugan and wants the confession dismissed as argumentative. Administrators at St. Charles High School are wondering just how effective their anti-drug programs really are. Following a survey distributed to their high school seniors, drug and alcohol use is higher than national average in practically every category. More than 44% of the high school seniors were considered to be at high or moderate risk to either themselves or others. While alcohol use has shown to have decreased slightly since the last survey, it still is the most common use. 82% of St. Charles High School seniors admit to drinking this last school year, 62% with the intention of getting drunk. The uses of such drugs as marijuana, LSD, and inhalants has also grown in the last 3 years. Well, an unusually high flow of water through the Fox River has prompted officials with Kane County Emergency Management Agency, in conjunction with County Board Chairman Warren Kammerer, to ask that the boaters adhere to a no-wake policy. The high flow of water is directed only in certain parts of the river, but officials say it's advised the policy be followed by the entire Fox River until the river level drops. Well, this policy is designed to protect watercraft operations and passengers from injury, as well as shoreline property that can be damaged by hazardous boat, wake, and wash. Our forecast today calls for mostly sunny skies, becoming warmer with a high of 85. Tonight, fair and mild, a low 65. Partly sunny and warm tomorrow, more humid with afternoon and evening showers possible, a high of 91 degrees. And for Friday, a few showers and thunderstorms could linger in the morning, becoming partly cloudy and less humid with a high near 80. And that's this morning's news and weather. I'm Michelle Fiore.
Dave Mikestrop.
And welcome back to Fox Valley Today. We're joined now by Chuck Shibakasi. He's written this wonderful book. It's called God Heals Today. And Chuck, maybe you can sort of get into a little bit about what the book is about.
Well, the book features over 70 confirmed healings, divine healings that have taken place in the greater Chicago area. So it's of interest to people living in the vast metropolitan area of Chicago, as well as we think people everywhere. And the healings range from, I'd say, from AIDS to autism to cancer to multiple sclerosis. There's some very, very dramatic ones and some that are not quite as dramatic, but they're all confirmed on each end. In other words, afterwards, after someone is healed, that party goes back or is taken back by the mother, etc., to a doctor, hospital, and so forth, and it's confirmed, that kind of situation.
So these are people that believe they were healed by a miracle.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe you can give us some background on yourself. How did you get involved with writing such a book?
Well, in the first place, I am a writer. I've been an advertising and marketing writer for many years. But book, no. Writers tend to write, advertising writers write short. It's hard for us to write long things. And this book is not terribly long, and neither are the stories. I've been healed myself of a couple of things. When a prostate, which was supposed to come out, was healed after prayer some years ago, and I've been fine ever since. My wife healed of a growth on her breast that was scheduled for a biopsy and also a surgery, and disappeared. And that was 15 years ago, and there's been no recurrence. So that kind of thing, of course, gets you very interested. I became a born-again Christian some years ago and began to see and experience these things, and you get pretty excited about this, and you want the world to know, that God is alive and things are really happening out there, because people are so desperate, and in many cases there's no other hope except God. I mean, frankly.
Now, is there a criteria that needs to be met for you to call something a healing?
Yes, there has to have been a medical problem, physical, in this case we're just dealing with physical problem first, and then there has to be a change. The change can occur, a doctor can say, this isn't there anymore, an osteopath or whatever it could be, and there has to have been something there before and something there afterwards. In many of these cases there have been sonograms or that kind of thing taken before and afterwards, blood tests, whatever it may be, as evidence that what was there no longer is there. Not to mention people, of course, feeling better too, but we don't go on that. I mean, that's a part of it. But there is confirmation in every one of these cases, every one.
So now did you talk with doctors as well as the patients, or?
We talked pretty primarily with the patients or the mothers. In other words, one child was healed shortly after the child was born. There were other cases of the parents. One case occurred in a doctor's office, a neurologist's office. The woman was a paraplegic, and the neurologist, I think another physician, I think the wife and the son, prayed for this gal right in the office of the neurologist, and she got up out of the wheelchair, a paraplegic. So that's a highly documented situation.
So the key to these healings was prayer?
Prayer, faith, all of this done in the name of Jesus Christ. That's right.
Now, all of the cases that you've documented in this book, were these people religious, or did they have a strong religious background before the healing occurred?
There were great variations. Most of them had a certain amount of faith. In some cases, the faith was on the part of those that did the praying, particularly in the cases of very small children. The case of one woman had stopped going to church, and somebody prayed for her, and she was healed, and she started going to church again. So there's quite a variety there. It's very, very interesting. And these people were all very open. I mean, in the book, they allow us to use their names. Their names, or the names of the child or whoever was involved. Very open.
Are most of these people from the Chicagoland area?
Yes, yes. Some have now moved away, but all of these cases were Chicagoland area people. I mean, or people that came into Chicago and were prayed for in the Chicago area. When I say Chicago, as you say, Chicagoland, yes.
Now, how did you find out about these people?
A variety of ways. I knew some myself. In some cases, other people would tell me. In some cases, pastors of churches. In some cases, parachurch organizations such as the Full Gospel Businessmen, a Women's Aglow. In some cases, particular ministries. There's one Catholic priest in the southern suburbs of Chicago that prays for the sick. And they opened their records to me so that I could go through and find out and contact these people.
It must have taken a while.
Well, I started about 5 years ago, stopped after a while, and then went really, so to speak, gung-ho within the last year and finished it up.
And when it was just finished recently?
It just came off the press in May, so that was last month.
Very recently.
Very, very recently, right.
So where can someone get one of these books?
Well, available in 3 bookstores in St. Charles, bookstore in Naperville, Plainfield, Addison. They can be ordered through Walden Books, and also there's a direct phone number they can call also for ordering.
Okay, maybe you want to hold it up.
All right.
Show everybody its wonderful orange and yellow, bright colors. Kind of looks like the light that we are supposed to see shortly before death.
Somebody
Very
else
bright.
mentioned that kind of thing, and it wasn't really in the mind, I think, of the graphics person. Could I also mention the phone number while I'm holding this up, or would
Sure.
you rather we waited? The number is area code 708-635-7636. 708-635-7636. Plus the Walden, through Walden on the bookstores in the general area. Many
Now,
of them.
maybe we can talk about, just choose one of the cases that's discussed in your
Sure.
book and tell us about it.
Well, I think one of the most dramatic cases that's almost mind-boggling, I mentioned to you about the child who was autistic. And the girl was 3.5 years old, was going to a special school, she was really in very bad shape. And the mother had gone in a church to a school that taught about biblical divine healing. And the mother's faith was gotten very high. And one morning, as the daughter was going to school, to her special school, the mother decided to do something with that faith. So she laid her hand on the child and prayed, and actually what she did was command a new brain into that child with above average, I think it was knowledge, in the name of Jesus Christ. And the child went off to the special bus or whatever, went to school. That afternoon, the child came back. Now, the child had never spoken a word, autistic, and also somewhat retarded, I believe. But she saw balloons hanging in the house, or a balloon, and she spoke her first word. She said, "Oh, look at the balloon." And as the mother says, the 13-year-old son flipped. And there was a report that came home also with the child that day that the teacher said she put her, I don't know, she did something that she had never done before, sentences, something she had done. And she began to improve very, very rapidly. Finally, she got off of everything. I talked to the mother a few months ago. Now this is about 9 years later, I think, and the child is an honor student and is just doing superbly, hasn't missed school in 2 years, is going to, of course, regular school, and has been considered by those involved, many of them, this would be doctors, et cetera, as a miracle child.
And she's speaking today.
Oh, she's doing fine. She's above average. She does have the above average intelligence that her mother had requested.
Her mother was the one that put her hands
on that
the
child,
little girl and just prayed?
That's right.
Many of the other cases in here, is the prayer spoken aloud or spoken to themselves?
There are cases where people have prayed themselves, where other people have prayed, where people have walked into hospital rooms, mothers, daughters, and laid hands on, and God has healed those people. Cases where people have gone to church, had hands laid on them, and the power of God hit them, and they would say in one case, saw a light or just felt this. And in some cases, immediately they could feel that they were healed. In some cases, people that believed the Word of God would just speak the Scriptures. My wife was healed primarily that way. She had prayer. She had had a growth on her breast, which was growing, detected at the Cancer Detection Center in Chicago. The physician sent her to the surgeon, who was very eager to get her to biopsy and surgery. My wife said, "Woohoo, that's a big thing, as you gals know." And so she wanted time, and she went to prayer, received prayer, and then she picked out a particular scripture. She didn't know too many at that time, that Isaiah 53 and 1 Peter 2:24, I believe, that by Jesus' stripes or his scourging, he bought our healing. And so she kept saying that and thanking God for it and speaking in addition to prayer. And I know that when I took her to the hospital, she knew that she knew that she knew that she was healed. And they had promised another mammogram to her, but they said the machine was broken down. Well, we insisted, and finally they came up with what turned out to be more mammograms. I was sitting in the reception room waiting for this. Surgery was scheduled, biopsy and surgery. The surgeon came down with his robe on, and he said, "We have a problem." And what he said, in essence, was that there was no point in going in for biopsy. If we did this, this, and this, and this. So then he said to me, "What should I do?" And I said, "You're the doctor. You tell me what you should do." And he said, "If it were my wife, I'd send her home." And we went home, and that was 15 years ago, roughly. Got a hold of a copy of the new mammograms. They'd taken one, found nothing. Taken two, found nothing. Taken three, found nothing. And we saw, and there was absolutely nothing on that mammogram. There was nothing on that picture, nothing. My wife's been great ever since. We're talking about 15 years ago.
Gosh,
So,
that is
you get
incredible.
excited and you want the world to know that God is alive, that God is healing, and that Jesus Christ really rose from the dead.
Well, we have to take a break right now, but when we come back after this, we'll hear more about miracle healing with Chuck Shipacassi.
And we're back now. We're talking today with Chuck Chipacossi, and he is author of a new book that was just out in May, God Heals Today, and we're talking about some miracle healings, medical documented healings, and that's an important thing. All of the testimonials you have in your book have been confirmed by physicians on the other side, that
That's right.
whatever the
That's right.
diagnosis was, the condition no longer appears.
Exactly, Pam. In fact, there were many I didn't use because they were not confirmed on the other end, because the individual or the parent decided, why go back, and there's no need to go through the medical costs of this. Something is no longer there, that's that. But I did not use those in the book. I discarded a lot.
Can you talk about some more that you did use?
That I did use? Well, we had discussed before the show about AIDS, and this is a young lady whose husband died. It wasn't her husband. Who's the father of an upcoming child that was in her womb, and she was very, very depressed. Died of AIDS. The father died of AIDS. The mother was HIV and had AIDS, and the child was was expected to come up in really bad shape. In fact, I think it was sonogram showed that the child had a short leg and something else, which are indications of someone about to be born with AIDS. So at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago, I believe it was over 30 physicians gathered for this big event when the child was about to be born. And the child was born perfectly normal. Nothing wrong with the child. The mother was healed of AIDS. And just last March, the mother had another child, perfectly healthy, and she is now working at her church, helping people who do have AIDS, counseling them, sharing the love of God with them, and telling about what God has done for her and for her child.
And she's no longer HIV positive?
Oh, she's fine. I visited with her. She looks the picture of health.
Now, how is that possible? And today, we don't
Well,
have a cure yet for AIDS.
Jesus said with God, all things are possible. And that's what it boils down to.
Wow.
Now, what are the reaction of physicians when they're confronted with this?
It varies. Some are amazed. There have been cases of physicians and therapists and nurses crying. There have been cases where they question the original diagnosis. One case, I understand, where the physician became angry. And there are cases also where the physician, in one case, the physician came out, presented the lady in the reception room, and said, God has done surgery on this lady. This is a miracle. So there have been cases where the doctors have said, yes, this is a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
This is a miracle. That case of autism, that child was called a miracle child. A case of a lady being healed of all kinds of polyps, the doctor came out in the reception room and said that God has done this.
Now, what are your hopes for the book to accomplish?
Our hopes are to reach as many people as possible so that they know that God is alive, that Jesus Christ is alive, and that this is available to people. And, that their lives can be transformed, they can become born-again Christians. And their lives can be transformed, and that, that healing is available out there for people. The love of God is out there, and most people don't know about it. It's not pushed. You don't hear about it. But it's there, and it's one tremendous answer to the healthcare problem. I'm not saying we shouldn't use doctors. No way do we say that at any time. But this is a marvelous adjunct and alternative, and it's available to anybody. Mm-hmm. Jesus said, "All things are possible to those who believe."
I think it's a well-known fact that a person's outlook and a mental approach to an illness is so important, that they have a positive attitude. And when faced with certain situations, it can be pretty depressing.
Oh, that is important. And as I mentioned, that lady with the child that was about to be born, the one with AIDS, she was quite depressed through the pregnancy, as you might well imagine. But she did have prayer by her pastor and others at the church. And God did heal her and the child in her womb. It's really very exciting.
Any other unusual examples you can give us from the book?
There's an example of a lady who now is married, who had MS for many years. And I believe she was in her 20s, and just about all of her organ functions had stopped. She was legally blind. Mayo Clinic sent her home to die. And they were praying for her in her church. And one day, people were visiting. It was on a Sunday afternoon in 1981, as I recall. She heard what she said she felt was the voice of Jesus Christ saying, "My daughter, get up and walk." And she took all of these things out of her, all of these life support systems, and began to walk. And her legs, strength came into them, And she walked down and she saw her father, and it was just amazing. And her father danced with her. It was just, it's mind-boggling. And I believe it was that same night she got a hold of some clothes and went into the church and gave it a witness to what God had done for her, and people burst into applause, and it was just amazing. And then she went for a ride on a bike, and now she is married and mother of 3 children, and she's a very charming, very nice lady. But this was exceedingly mind-boggling, obviously.
And no reoccurrence now?
No, she seems to be fine, as far as I know. You know, she's functioning. I think she's working, and also a mother of 3. So that tells you something.
Busy lady. Hey, in any of these cases, do the patients feel a presence?
Yes.
Slightly
Yes.
before they are healed?
Oh yeah, and some before and some during. Some will feel the heat when somebody has laid hands on them. They may feel the heat, you know, of God, of the Holy Spirit.
So they feel hands?
Well, very often one of the methods, biblical methods of healing is the hands-on. Jesus said, these signs will follow those who believe. In my name they will lay hands on the sick and they will recover. And there have been many cases of this. And there's a feeling very often at the time when somebody can feel the power of God and can feel healed. The pain disappears, this disappears, and they just feel good. Good. And yeah, there's a tremendous variety. God does this in many ways. No, He is God.
Your book is very inexpensive. What's the price? on
Yes, it is. It's selling at retail bookstores for $4.95, and it can be ordered, as I say, directly. I think it's inexpensive. You know, it's not a long, big book, but we want a lot of people to get it. We want it to be affordable to as many people as possible.
And give us that number once again.
All right. The direct number is area code 708-635-7636. And that, you know, it can be shipped out. There's an additional cost for mailing, tax, and so forth, an extra $1, which doesn't even cover all of it. And it's also can be ordered through Walden Books, and 3 bookstores in St. Charles, and one in Naperville, one in Addison, and one in where is it? In Plainfield. In this, you know, general area. It's also in other bookstores, of course.
And it's called God Heals
God
Today.
Heals Today.
Well, thank you for being with us today, Chuck.
Well, thank you that I could come on, and I really appreciate it very much.
You have some very interesting stories. Thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Something that can have such a positive effect in the lives of these children who are affected almost daily with such negative role models. I imagine you just see a real change in some of these children.
We do. And our volunteers don't think that it's because of them, and it really is. The teachers will tell us that there's a change in how the child is behaving in the classroom. They're more motivated, they seem to do better, and they try harder. They get along better with their friends or with their family. And I think it's fun that sometimes they don't see themselves as being really good students. And after they've been with a big brother or a big sister and they've worked on some homework for a while, they start making the honor roll. And they're just beamed. They're just really excited about the whole thing. Because I think if they can have good self-esteem and if they can do well, it takes care of all the other problems that are out there.
Sounds great. We'll take a break and we'll come back with more right after this.
Okay, we're clear.
And welcome back. We're talking about Big Brothers Big Sisters, and joining us has been Mary McComb and Arnie Breitung. And Arnie, now you are a big brother. Can you tell us about your experience in this program?
Well, it's certainly been interesting. You do the things that little boys and big boys like to do together. And in my case, I have a 11-year-old, a one-parent family. And it's been thoroughly enjoyable. It's very poignant at times because it brings back memories when you were that age. Before the Little League game, the anticipation, the trepidation, and afterwards the elation, or if he strikes out or drops the ball, and I know exactly how he feels, even though it's been a while, obviously.
Now, when do you usually find time for your little brother?
Well, it varies. During the school year, of course, it's a little more difficult. We can go out during the week if I have them home by 9 or 9:30, and weekends at times. And of course, the summer it opens up so much more because we have so much more time.
Right. What are some of the activities that you do with him?
Well, as I said, except for the toys, the little boys and big boys do the same thing. We shoot baskets at my house a lot. We have a pool table. We play pool. We spend a lot of time in my house. We play darts. He likes to go to the batting cage in the summer, sharpen up his batting eye, and he even got me in a go-kart once or twice. That was something to see. And we go to movies. He likes to bowl, and just spend time together.
It sounds like you say you spend a lot of time at your home. It is just the time spent together more than what you're doing that's important.
It's very true, but I think looking ahead, I'd like to spend a little more time one-on-one and get him to open up a little bit more, because we have been pretty frenetic at times, and he's very active. But looking ahead, I'd just like to spend a little more quiet time with him and get to know him a little bit better that way and let him open up.
Well, being an 11-year-old, he may start quieting down a little bit on his own as he matures here.
I think so. It's, you can sense the uncertainty that they have at that age. It's what should I do, what shouldn't I do? And but it's a great experience. And one thing that sort of bothers me is the fact that they have so many more volunteers from the Big Sisters, from the Big Brothers. And I think I can understand it because I procrastinated for years. I knew it was a great program. But rather than get involved, you think you're too busy. And in talking to the men out there, I'd say, if you think you're busier than the women, you're going to have a hard time convincing them. I can tell them that. It just seems that they think, we think that we're too busy. I found out now that I didn't have to wait till retirement. I should have been in the program for years because there's time, and it's so well worth it. The fact that you can be a positive influence during these formative years is so important.
Have you gotten any kind of response from his parent about the effect that it's had?
I have. In this particular case, there happens to be an older brother and a younger sister. And the mother is very caring of her children, but she has to work. It's, economically, it's very tough for her. And she feels very strongly about the Big Brother program, the mother, the fact that her two boys in this case have this exposure to other people and to an outside influence other than the family.
So you would recommend it, it sounds like.
I certainly would. You'd be doing yourself a favor.
And you've been in the program. You've been in the program now for over a year.
I have a year in right now because we commit for 1 year at a time, as Kelly knows.
Is this something you think you will continue to do after
yes.
this youngster is finished?
If you still have me next year, I think so, because we're learning a lot of things together. It's just a very warm feeling to work with them.
Now, Kelly, he brought up an interesting point. Is it easier to find more women volunteers than men?
This is the flip-flop. We have more little brothers than we do little sisters. So maybe they come in about the same rate, big sisters more than little big brothers a little bit, but the need for the men is so much greater. So we've got couples matches where a husband and wife team can do this together and take a little brother. And we recently are having big sisters match with a little brother. One that's about 6 or 7, there's a woman could spend some time reading with them or spending some time showing them different things, but the role model is what they're really needing. They need the men.
Now, Arnie, tell me about the screening process you had to go through before you could become a Big Brother.
Well, I thought I was running for president. They do have a very comprehensive background check, which indeed they should have. What do you see? And you have to go to your local law enforcement people and be sure that you have a clean slate there. And they have an in-home interview, which is very nice, where they meet your wife or the husband, whatever the case may be, and you can see what the situation is at the home that the Big or Little comes from. And it's quite complete, as indeed it should be.
Oh, certainly. Well, and I'm sure they're looking to see if the spouse is going to be supportive of this program. What do you think that, keeps people from signing up, like you mentioned? You assume that you're going to have to be doing special things most of the time?
I think it's a feeling that, as Kelly mentioned before the program, you're not adopting someone, first of all, let's put that out. You're making a new friend. And what could be better than that? But I think it's the inertia of the fact that all you have to do is make a phone call. And I waited for years. I'm sorry that I did. Just pick up the phone and call Big Brother. What is it, 844-9090? That's all you have to do. It's just that easy to get started, but it's that first step that's so hard.
And are you bowling this weekend at the bowl-a-thon?
Not this weekend.
Okay.
But I am involved with it, and I ran around with my little contribution slip to get that in time.
Okay, we've got a tape here of one of the bowling programs, so maybe we can take a look at that.
There is a point when you cannot walk away, when you have to stand up straight and tall and mean the word you say. There is a point you must decide.